Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Modern Investing on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and we have a distinguished guest today, Dr. Milan Sambrek. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. Delighted to be here.
Great to have you. And Jim Eat from Eat Foundation. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you, Sasha. Great to be here.
Okay, so the market is doing quite well, and yesterday was finally NVIDIA's report, and although they showed absolutely astonishing results, including, believe it or not, 76% margin profits on their products. Now, but the stock was so much ahead of itself. It was already so well priced. So in spite of that report, market was very hesitant. Very interesting is that it went down a couple of points, then went up a couple of points. It couldn't figure out what to do. Then it went down, and today in the morning it went up actually to 505 in the first few minutes of trading, but then it went down. Now it's recovering and building a nice base. So yes, interesting is that yesterday I was so involved in the movements of the stock of NVIDIA that I was doing several trades. It's just interesting, but all the trades were very well structured. For example, I would sell. I would get a covered call. For example, I would sell covered call. So I would buy, say, 300 shares and sold 3 covered calls on NVIDIA. Now, the shares went up. I'm making profit. There's nothing to speak about. Say $800, $900 here and there. So I would close position because I was not sure myself now which way. First of all, of course, it's before earnings. Now, yeah, obviously, if the earnings are lousy, the stock will go down on 50 points. Okay. Now, if it will be okay, so it will go down to probably 20 points. Now it will be spectacular. I was not sure that even in that case the stock will go big time out, like 20 points up or 30 points up. I thought that it will be probably stay the same. Maybe it will gain 5-10 points, but no more than that because it's already so much overpriced, I could say. Now, when I'm saying overpriced, and tomorrow the stock will be 520. And people, what a fool! He doesn't know what he's talking about. But from judging from historical prices and its earnings reports and reactions, I thought that stock was at least fairly priced. It's not overpriced, but it was fairly priced. So then, okay, then I started to sell puts, small positions like 2-3 puts. Then the stock would go higher. Again, there is a profit. I closing, and I did yesterday. Probably 12, maybe even more trades. And when there was 5 minutes left, and the day was very profitable for me, but I discovered that 5 minutes before the closing, I have no position of NVIDIA. Simply none. So whatever positions I initiated, I was closing. Initiated, closing. So it was almost like a day trading, if you will. But at the end of the day, 5 minutes before the closing, I have no position. How can I be in no position when there is a report coming in the next few minutes? So I sold covered cash covered puts on NVIDIA, at least to be there, just for something, So I traded today again, and again, all my trades were profitable, not that much, $700, $900 here and there. So now I still have one position after all this trading. And what is that? It's, okay, I have only I sold 2 cash covered puts. Now remember what I traded this time. I made May 17th, 480 puts.
Wow.
I got paid, believe it or not, $46.75. So for those two pools, I got cash 93 $59,350. Okay. If I want to cash it now, I will net $350. But now there is no reason for me to hurry up. I can hold on to this position and probably will end up pocketing all this premiums that I got. Anyway, so much about NVIDIA and so much this crazy couple of days for me. And okay, let me ask you how you're doing these days. Milan, what would you say?
Well, first of all, Sasha, let me have a response to what you just told us. You're selling covered calls on NVIDIA. Now, if you have a security which is rising, you're better off holding that security than selling covered calls on it.
But I was not convinced at all that NVIDIA at this point is a rising stock. I was not.
Well, yeah, but that's the issue here with what you're talking about, your involvement with NVIDIA. Two things you require. One is you have to be a market wizard. I have never been able to pick NVIDIA type of stocks except with hindsight. So you have to be a Sasha Star market wizard. And the
No,
other thing is,
but wait, Milan, you know,
don't be
you know
modest.
very well. No, okay, hold on. You know very well, same as Jim and I, that there are 7 stocks responsible for all the rise of S&P 500. You have
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
493.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
Italians say, garbaccio. You know what is garbaccio, right?
Yes.
And and you have 7 stocks. One of them is Nvidia, but only one of 7. I'm not saying that at this time, right now, Nvidia is the best out of those 7, simply because it's so okay, I'll say it's fairly priced, but it's priced to such a degree that okay, I know the disposition that I initiated since the last month is to that I sold 2 this, S&P, so not S&P, 2 2 puts for 80 May. I can bet, I can put 5 to 1. You can put $1, I will put $5 that I will win this transaction. There's no other way. I'm willing to put 5 to 1. Is it fair bet? No.
You know, Sasha, the other issue with investing using your approach, in addition to needing to be a market wizard, it takes time. You have to be at it constantly. Now, most
It's
people
about 7 seconds, Milan. All these transactions is taking maybe even less. Oh, you know, this is the only thing. Okay, what my dilemma would be, whether it's a 480 or 470. On 480, you get a little bit more money. Okay, so the decision is 480. Now, months. Okay, months. Okay, first I thought about February. Then I look at March, and obviously March pays more money. I say, wait a sec. If March pays so much money more than February, then April could pay even more. Look at April. Oh, of course. And what about May? Okay, May. Okay. Now we got it right. So that all takes 7 seconds.
Well, you know, I mentioned this frequently. We discourage our members, and I'm talking here about members in the Monday Morning Millionaire program, which has about 300 members and mainly made up of professional people, largely dentists, but also veterinarians and accountants and so on, whose main source of income is their job, what they're doing. And so they need to spend as much time as necessary on their job to generate income and spend as little time as possible effectively to invest. So now, as you say, the S&P 500, only 7 or 8 stocks make up the leading part of it, but we don't know when those will change. So owning the market outright by having an exchange traded fund which tracks the S&P 500, which is an excellent representation of the American economy as a whole, the world's strongest economy in 200 years, requires no thinking. those leading stocks will not always be leading stocks. We don't know when they will no longer be leading stocks, but we do know that the S&P 500, as representing the American market as a whole, the American economy as a whole, will remain as strong as it has been. You know, I often quote Confucius, who said, "Study the past if you will define the future." So, you know, when you take a look at the American economy's past 200 years, it's been the strongest economy in history. Will it remain that way? Not forever, but will it remain that way in the foreseeable future? Oh, yes. So it's a very simple thing to do, is buy the American economy as a whole by buying an exchange-traded fund which tracks the S&P 500, and SPY is the best of all of them. You know, there are more exchange-traded funds today than there are individual securities. Only about half a dozen of them represent the market as a whole. And SPY is the oldest with the narrowest bid-ask spread and the most heavily traded. So it's really the place to be. Mention about the bid-ask spread, it's an expense which investors face and which many people don't even know about. So with SPY is the narrowest there is, the lowest expense ratio. That's the place to be. That way, people in my profession, people who are working for a living, are still working for a living, get time to spend in their profession, which is going to generate the most of their income until they're ready to start on invested income, which comes close to when they're retired. So we discourage individual stock ownership because we don't know when that'll change. We encourage investing in the American economy as a whole, the strongest economy in the last 200 years, and likely to remain that way. If you're cherry picking, you can get real estate that has worked very well. For example, the Case-Shiller description of values, of property values in 20 cities in the United States shows how they have gone up and down over the course of time. They're only half as effective as owning the stock market as a whole. The stock market as a whole will always go up, and it'll always go up for 4 reasons. One is inflation. One of the best places to be in an inflationary economy is in the stock market. The second one is population growth, because companies that successfully sell to a larger growing market become more valuable over time. The third one is technology. Since the start of the Industrial Revolution around 1960, technology has exponentially powered human ability and productivity to new highs. So that's an aspect of the stock market. And the fourth one is natural selection. The index always comprises the best companies in the market. So being in the U.S. market has been the most secure place to be unless you're cherry picking. Let me give you an interesting example of cherry picking. I have a violinist friend, retired, and she had a violin bow for which she paid $400 about 50 years ago, used it all her life, and sold it just recently for $18,000. Now, that amounts to about 5% growth annually, but it's a tool. Tools decline in value, not violin bows and not violins. So she was able to get that kind of money for it. The buyer is happy because the buyer, also a lady violinist, will use it her whole life and ultimately, based on history, get more for it than she paid for it. Maybe not a lot more, say 5% annually, which is okay, but it's a tool and it hasn't declined in value. And the vendor, the person in the middle, the broker, gets 20% of the sale. So he is happy, the seller is happy, the buyer is happy. We're cherry picking over here. When you start cherry picking, yeah, people can buy real estate that has outperformed the market, but you know, for every San Francisco which has grown, there's a Detroit which hasn't grown, and so that's cherry picking only works well with hindsight. But so that's what we recommend, because particularly it takes so little time. It takes so little time. Our members, most professional people, need to spend as little time as possible effectively. And buying the American market as a whole has been effective for over 200 years, unless you're cherry picking. So,
A quick question. Last program, you said that you are 100% in cash.
oh, okay, let me expand on that. Okay, you asked me, so I should finish that. I got into cash about the 14th of November. And we've stayed in cash ever since. And about half an hour ago, when I checked, when we got into SPY, we were in cash. Then we got into SPY on the 14th of November at $449 a share. Since
But
that time,
wait, so you were in cash position fully by 14, right? And
yeah,
on 14th May, what about 13th? You were in cash on 13th?
yeah. And so what happened was then the put call ratio became positive. So we got into SPY, keeping our 50-50 asset allocation and listening to what Gerald Loeb says, put all your eggs into one basket, but then watch that basket. And so that basket for us is the American economy as a whole, SPY. So we put our money in there on the 14th of November at $449 a share. Last I checked about half an hour ago, it was $455. We made $6.51 a share in a matter of a couple of weeks. Now, that wouldn't keep somebody like you happy because you're used to much more than that. But certainly you can make a very nice living making $6 a share on a company in a matter of a few weeks. So now, when we were looking at the put-call ratio recently, earlier today, the put-call ratio is positive for the week. It's negative for the month, but it's positive for the year. So my wife and I are considering going back into cash because it's going to be negative for a while. And in a declining market, being in cash is a very nice place to be. So
you're becoming a market timer.
I'm sorry to say you're right. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Jim, what about you? You are doing probably quite well on this market, right?
Yes, actually, I am. I'm pretty happy because I agree with both of you. I do both. I invest in market index funds, and I also cherry pick stocks. So I do both of what you're both suggesting. And I have been curious. To get back to NVIDIA, you and I have been tracking that stock for quite a while.
Yes.
Sasha, do you know? I read an article. Do you know a stock that my feed is down, but the ticker is ASML?
Of course, yes, I do.
Yes. So the basically saying that was both are good stocks. That was the one that the author preferred, and so I was interested in your perspective on that particular stock because they're the makers of the chips, and but it's extremely expensive.
It is very much so.
Yeah. So I did not buy it. Although I'm very intrigued by it, so I'm going to keep an eye on it. And if I get a lot of extra cash, I might buy into it. But I want to buy 100 shares, so that's a big commitment. I'm not sure I'm ready to make it yet. But that's the kind of thing that I would be tracking. Is like I believe in the semiconductor industry right now. I think it's a matter of national defense, and so I look for good companies in that area. And so we're talking about good companies, and my track record with that has been pretty darn good. Not to brag, but the one thing that I keep running into is that people are asked about how the economy is doing, because we're all saying that the American economy is the place to be, and 8 out of 10 people are saying it's poor or maybe fair, and but their purchasing says the opposite. They're still buying. And the reason they think it's poor and fair because wages are going up and unemployment is at 50-year lows. So we have jobs. The jobs are paying us more money. And we're still buying, even though inflation has caused the prices to rise. Now, the inflation was caused by the global pandemic and the breakdown of our global distribution systems, and that global distribution system has been repaired. But prices aren't dropping because companies realize, hey, if we're willing to buy at this price, we're not going to lower them. So, and the fact is, people are willing to buy at the prices that they're buying at now. And
James, ASML is selling at a little over $680.
yeah. So that's a big commitment.
$68,000 to buy 100 shares.
Right.
You need to have 100 shares in order to write covered calls on it, or cash covered puts, right? Well, that would keep a lot of people out of the market, wouldn't it?
Yes.
At $688, yeah.
I agree, and that's why I'm not recommending it. I'm hesitant because of the price. But my basic point is that the economy is doing well, and there's no reason not to think that. But people are thinking that because prices did go up and they have stayed up. Now, inflation itself is not rising nearly as quickly as it was. It's really moderated. And so inflation is not currently something that we should be alarmed about.
We have a condition which is called disinflation. We still have inflation, but at a falling rate, not nearly as much. It's declining. Inflation rate is declining, so economists call that disinflation. And we are now in an area of disinflation. We still have inflation, but at a declining rate.
And we don't want to experience deflation because that will mean that we're in a recession. And, I see no signs of a recession, and I see that the consumer spending is still robust. So I'm still pro on being in the market. And it's certainly, I have not yet seen any reason for the investor. That's not the investor sentiment because Milan tracks that. But I'm talking about the polls that are saying that people, voters, for example, are negative on the economy. And I don't think there's any reason to be negative on the economy. I think we should be still companies are reporting record earnings. I mean, gosh, things are, every single signal that we see is positive. And so even though the market cannot continue to keep going up, we all know that. But I'm not ready to predict that it's going to have a correction anytime soon. And I don't see a recession on the immediate horizon either. So I'm positive. I'm still bullish.
Wonderful.
Well, markets fluctuate as do individual stocks. Sometimes markets fluctuate as much as 30% in 1 year. There's a history of that. So the money that investors are going to need next week, next month, and so on to pay their municipal taxes and to buy groceries and maybe take a holiday, budget for a car, and so that money does not belong in the market. Even though the market has a record of being the best place to invest, generally speaking, no cherry picking, we have to keep in mind that it will sometimes fluctuate as much as 30% in any 1 year. And we don't ever want to be in a position where we have to sell anything for less than we paid for it.
Absolutely. It's all should be discretionary funds, money you could afford to lose. But, some people, are trying to play the market like it's a lottery system, hoping to hit it big.
Absolutely.
And that's unfortunate, and I would discourage you from that. Although I don't know your personal circumstances, I would only play with money that I could afford to lose. And so far, it's been treating me very well.
I've just checked. I remember I just mentioned that this two puts that I sold, I could cash out a few minutes ago for $300 profit. It's now $450, and I'm not going to touch them because in some time it will bring me much more money than that.
I'm just popping in to wish you and everybody else a happy Thanksgiving and everything. So I just want everybody's thoughts around that, and if what y'all were most thankful about on this investment day, because I know tomorrow I'm gonna have to go home, and that's one of the things that we will do as a Thanksgiving ritual is say what we are thankful about this year. So I guess I'll start with you, Sasha. What are you most thankful about this year, and Jim and Milan as well, because it is kind of a Thanksgiving ritual.
Well, I can think of thanking one more time NVIDIA and its management and the brilliant product we have. And that's a way to go. And I don't see any reason why it will slow down.
I am thankful for the ceasefire in the Palestine area now in Gaza, and I'm hoping that this will lead to a longer term solution. But I'm not bullish on that, but I hope.
You can't be bullish on that because there has never been peace in that part of the world for a very long time. Very unlikely to happen. And the fact that they've decided now to stop fighting for a while in order to supply some of the people there with water and food and electricity and so on is wonderful and unexpected. Yeah. I am most thankful for having Rosie as a part of my life. And so, and the way the market
I want to revise mine. I'm thankful for my wife too.
Yeah. And the way the market is going, we were on a holiday one time with some dentists largely, and one of the dentists supported Trump. The reason he's supporting Trump is because the market had gone up under Trump, and so he has no respect for this man who is basically a thief. But he says you're keeping the market going up, making it possible for me to take this holiday, which otherwise I couldn't take. So that's what's happening again today. The market is going up, and so we can all start planning unexpected expenses such as a holiday or a new automobile or a boat or something like that. Yeah. So I'm grateful for the American economy. I'm grateful for.
It's about 2 weeks ago, we were discussing the holiday plans and so on. I started to look, and the prices are going through the roof. Everything is so much more expensive this time. So we were looking at some holidays, and then the stock market jumped and generated very large profits for me. And I said, no, we'll go to all-inclusive 5 stars to Aruba. Don't worry about it.
Hey, Sasha, just really quickly, and I'm going to hear from you, Jim, and then I'm going to jump off and everything. I just want to let you know, Sasha, because while we may disagree on certain issues, even the ways that certain things are done and everything, I am thankful to get a lot of advice from you in terms of finances, both in the chess and on this investment show and all along this line. So I am thankful for our friendship, both the friendship with you as well as with Milan and with Jim as well, and also for a number of other opportunities that I've had this year as well, not just with Pod TV, but the cultural center that I work with and a number of other places as well. So I just want to let you know that I am thankful for our friendship and our acquaintanceship. So I just want to let you know that.
Likewise. And the only reason that you can get useful information and enjoy it is that Chatovi is not part of the show.
Hey.
That's a whole separate conversation. We won't go into those things and everything.
I'll change that subject real quick. When I was talking about in people's view of the economy, I neglected to mention young people, and they're very discouraged right now. And part of that is we were talking earlier about homes and their prices right now. And it does depend on where you live, but generally, the young people are having a very hard time getting started. And we've got a generation of renters that don't see the prospects of owning homes. And that is very discouraging to them. So a lot of this surveys hit young people that are negative about the economy because their circumstances are different from mine. I could afford to go out and buy groceries. Yes, the groceries are a little more expensive, but that's okay. But they're trying to get started, and that's a different. And I remember when I was sweating rent, and it wasn't fun. And we have to think about some way of getting home prices back under control.
James,
because
question for you, James. Question for you. Today's young people stand to inherit more wealth than any generation ever in history before. How does that affect the home pricing and their costs and expenses? They stand to inherit more than anybody ever in history before.
Yes, I have seen that already in my life, and people are not selling their homes; they're giving them to their children, that sort of thing. It's the inheritance of wealth is one thing, and if you are in a situation where you're going to inherit wealth, you don't have the problems that people have if they're not in that situation. And in fact, lots of people are not in that situation.
Jim, it's a very simple equation. There will be a division of people who inherited wealth and those who didn't inherit wealth.
Correct.
So these people will be in a completely different financial circumstances than those who didn't inherit wealth. And this is, there is nobody to blame about it. It's just the nature that some people, they're better equipped for success in life, and they will be much more successful through they were born in better areas, they got better education, and so on and on.
No, there's no one to blame for that. You're absolutely right. Some people are born on third base and think they hit a triple, and like our ex-president Trump, he inherited a great amount of wealth, and he's been losing it, but that's another story. What I'm talking about, though, is affordable housing. And affordable housing is a matter of policy to some extent, and whether or not we make it a priority. Right now, I live in Silicon Valley. There's no such thing as affordable housing. And there's a lot of talk about it in the political sphere about creating it. And there's a lot of not in my backyard thinking. And so there's a great deal of pushing back on any effort to make affordable housing. Now, San Jose, which is a hugely growing city, high-tech city, part of Silicon Valley, and has taken strides to build affordable housing. So it's proving that it can be done, but you have to make it a priority, and you have to build it in to a larger budget, an overall budget.
Jim, I think it also involves a different mindset of same young people, that those who are born into inheritance of a large fortune. It's one story. Now, those who don't, or recent immigrants, for example,
Yes.
in Toronto area, you see a lot of, for example, Chinese immigrants. They're coming, they live in one apartment in some cheap area of Toronto, 2-bedroom apartment. There are about 8 to 10 people, children or so. They all live in this tiny apartment.
They're used to that. They're used to that, yeah.
Hold on, yeah, but it lasts only a few months, say maybe a year and a half maximum. Then they outgrow this apartment. What they do is they still continue to live in this apartment, cramped apartment, but they already saved enough money, maybe to buy a grocery store, or maybe to buy some kind of a rental property. It could be a duplex or even triplex with living quarters and some business on the first floor, whatever it might be. Maybe it's the same grocery store or so on. And you know what? I'll tell you one thing. In 5 years, these people will be so far ahead compared to people who are born here and complaining that the prices are astronomical, we cannot buy anything, we cannot do anything.
They're not afraid to work. The issue is they're not afraid to work.
You're making a valuable and important point, and it's the story of New York City as well as Toronto and many other cities. And this is the story of immigration, why we have a Statue of Liberty on our shores, because this is what makes the country strong. People coming in. Go ahead, Mark. I'm not quite done.
Yesterday on one of our shows, World Edition, you mentioned a communal living, and I do have parents that were part of or knew people that were in similar kind of situations and everything. And that is something that we're seeing even here in North Carolina, where there are people that are of a like group, whether that is artists, whether that is other people that are like-minded, that are doing that joint venture where they are finding a house and living in that house, even though it might be crowded and everything. Matter of fact, I have a friend that's literally getting ready to move to a kind of community that's going to be a bunch of artists, musicians, and everything. They'll be living together. So that's something that people might want to consider. But the frustration that I have sometimes is that there are a lot, and I don't know how it is in California or even in Canada, but there are a lot of empty buildings that are even empty apartments, but then they're building new apartments. I mentioned that on World Edition earlier. That can be frustrating to those that want some kind of housing when they see all this housing being developed and you haven't even filled the ones that you already have. Is that a problem y'all have in Canada and California?
Mark, thank you for reminding me yesterday's program. By the way, the only time, and I would like to ask Milan if they had something similar to Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, of course, so-called communal living, because if you learn the story of the Bolsheviks, Russian Revolution, one of the things they wanted to build the new society, they wanted to destroy the old society. How you destroy the old society? You have to destroy the main institution of old society. It's a family. So when you have father, you have mother, you have kids, and so on, that has to be destroyed. If that would be destroyed, then you can create a new communist person, the communist builder, the communist man, and communist woman as well. So what they invented was a communal living. When there are, say, 100 people, say 50 men and 50 women, they all live together as a commune. They're all building communism, and some women, not all of them are working. Some of them are getting pregnant, for example. So they have kids, and all together they bring up those kids. Now, when they would be asked, who is the father of that kid? They say, the father is a builder of communism. It could be one of 50 men who are there. And it doesn't matter. He's a communist builder, and his child will be a communist builder, and mother is already communist builder. And furthermore, she already contributes to a society by bringing a child. So the question could be that some women could be more attractive than others, so they will have many more kids or so on. There's nothing wrong with that. So the kids are kids, and the more kids they can produce, the better. So even some women who are not as attractive, they still find available men, the communist builders, who will help to bring more young communist builders or so on. And that experiment lasted, believe it or not, from 1921 to 1929. What's happened in 1929? That Stalin started collectivization of Russia. And many of these communist builders, they went to God very quickly. And the other who remains, they went into so-called kolkhoz, which is collective farm. And on collective farm, there was no such a luxury as they could bring kids, build communism, and so on. They had to work their 18 hours a day, and all their, whatever they produced they had, it's all being taken away from them.
Interestingly, during that period that you're talking about, 3% of the farms were privately owned. 3%. Yeah. And that 3% of the farms produced over 25% of the agricultural output.
I thought more.
Maybe more. I don't know. Certainly, it's obvious that people working for themselves are working differently than people working for the collective. I had an uncle who was a colonel in Marshal Tito's Yugoslavia, and so he's polishing up his little Volkswagen. I said to him, why aren't you doing this to the streetcar, which is collectively owned? And so they're experimenting in ways that have been destructive. And so ultimately they see that 3% of the farms that are producing most of the products is the way to go about it. And that's why they asked some Harvard economists to help them turn the economy around. And the advice was privatize. And the privatization resulted in a great deal of theft. So you're now at a point where fewer than 50 individuals own one half of Russia's enormous wealth. Fewer than 50. They own 1/3 of downtown London housing. Yeah. Interestingly,
Jim, can I teach you, did you ever belong to a commune? Because I know they were popular in the 60s as well in the California region and all along those lines. So did you ever belong to one of those that was in the 60s when that was popular?
I was a child of the 70s, so no. But the only communist commune-oriented living is the kibbutz in Israel. And so we don't
Yeah,
see
right.
it.
Yeah.
They call themselves communist countries, but they're not practicing communism. And so the privatization has its own downsides. And what we needed to remember is this is a numbers game. So of these people, these entrepreneurs that start their own businesses, we see them and we congratulate them and we think all you have to do is work hard. But, I know that I got lucky working for the company that I worked for because the company did very well. And people that were working just as hard as me for a company that didn't do as well as I did. Guess what? They weren't any different than I was working hard. And, it wasn't a question of trying. It was a question of only some in this system can succeed. And if you're one of the ones that succeeds, remember you're lucky.
Yeah. Question for everybody here, a little bit of an aside. Today's the anniversary of Kennedy's assassination.
Mm-hmm.
What impact did Kennedy's association have on the stock market, short term and long term?
Well, it must have been, I don't recall the exact numbers, but it must have shaken the confidence of the country. And I would think that investments were part of that. And it was, a time of strife. There was also the civil rights, and there was all sorts of the Vietnam War. The 60s were chaotic, and I was too young to really appreciate it at the time. But I grew up in a period of time where I knew people just a little bit older than me that were part of that, and they were lecturing me about me not being active enough. Not my activism was not up to their standards, and this period of time. Markets don't like uncertainty, and it was a very uncertain time.
Well, of course, I was too young at the time of Kennedy's assassination, and I was still in the Soviet Union at the time. But from time to time here, and I'm following the markets actively, three events could be comparable. Of course, it's the 1987 crash when the market was
9/11.
It was 9/11, and it was 2008-9.
Yes.
Yeah.
These are three very, very serious crash. 2022, when market went down considerably, and it was not one-day crash, it was almost 10 months in the making. That was quite a scary situation. And
biggest market drop in history that took place then.
Milan, I would guess that there was an uptick, and I don't know this, but I know it was one of the tenets that he was practicing, but I would guess that there was an uptick in people wanting to be of service to their country, because that was the famous code that he had and everything. So I imagine that there was an uptick in voluntarism during that time, and that could have impacted the market as well. I imagine that there was an uptick in a lot of people that were volunteering for organizations, including some public organizations or organizations that are publicly traded. But that would be a guess. I was, like I said, literally 1 year older when that happened and everything. But I would guess there was probably an uptick in volunteerism.
The Peace Corps was really popular at that time. And that's one example of what you're talking about, Mark. Yeah. There was no question, he says not what the country do for you, but what can you do for the country? He was what he did in Berlin. He was just charismatic and inspiring. It was a tragedy. But then Bobby Kennedy got assassinated. Then Martin Luther King got assassinated. This was just a horrible time, and the country was so divided. We're divided now, but and we are getting mass killings and things like that are symptomatic of how division how it can rip apart a country. And we're the United States, but we're not united now.
The Roman Empire had 100 emperors. 1/2 of them were assassinated. Yeah, it was a very dangerous job.
Starting to be
not assassinated at a 50% rate because they have better bodyguards and better system of protection. I wouldn't be surprised that's the reason why 50% of Roman emperors got assassinated, but we don't have 50% assassinations of leaders today because of better protection they're getting.
You're absolutely right. There's no question that there are people that had wanted to kill presidents but couldn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, actually, from that point of view, the United States are doing extremely well because in the last so many years there was only Kennedy who was assassinated, and there are so many presidents who were not assassinated.
Well, Ford and Reagan there were attempts on their lives.
There were,
Yeah.
yes, agree. So, who's next going to be assassinated?
I was positive Obama would be, and
Mhm.
I was amazed that he was not. And there was so much hatred out there, and there's so much hatred now for it. And there is always flames in this country, and I think Trump poured gasoline on them, and so this is if heaven forbid he is elected again, there will be people such as myself that leave the country. I won't want to be part of a country with him as its leader, and the people and what he inspires in my fellow citizens. This is just not the country that I was born in, and not the country that we're idealists at heart. We want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's not all about stepping on someone else's neck in order to raise yourself up.
So the last polls that I saw was 46% for Trump and 44% for Biden.
Yeah, these polls are way too early to put any. And people that answer the polls are usually generally, furious. Most people, such as myself, don't answer the polls. So.
Yeah, there's no point really.
Yeah.
I mean, Biden. Okay, he looks old. He's old. There's no doubt. But to me, it's better half alive Biden, or even half dead Biden, than alive Trump.
Well, and Trump is only a few years younger than Biden, and he's in much worse health. So,
Yeah, but he's going through all those rallies, and he's dancing and clapping, and it's almost like a vaudeville show.
The organization today made up of the oldest hierarchy is the Roman Catholic Church. And so all the prelates and the people at the top are older people. And, older people have more experience and probably will make wiser decisions than the same people would 20 years previously. So that seems to work. So being old is probably not such a liability. Henry Kissinger, really a war criminal, but he just published another book, which I looked at. It's about this thick. And it is so well written, and the man's 100 years old. So
you know the name of the book? How I Became a War Criminal.
That's really cool.
I shouldn't be laughing.
We all decline from the neck down, unquestionably, but from the neck up, many people can retain their sharp levels of operation, like the people in this show, for example, or most of our viewers. From the neck up, we can remain as sharp as ever because of increased experience. Sorry?
The Roman Catholic Church is not a very good example. They're leading, and their elders are resistant to change as well. And we know from the scandal harming the church. And we also know that less than 50% of the U.S. Citizens attend church now. It's shocking to hear that stat because it was normal when I was a child that someone went to some service, whether it was a temple, a synagogue, a mosque, a church. It didn't matter. It was part of life, and it's not for the younger people now. And it's partly because the older people that ruled. They didn't allow priests to marry. They don't allow women to ascend to positions of power. They got to adjust to the times, and they're not capable of doing it. They like the old ways, the preservation of tradition. I know my grandmother was a Vatican I Catholic. She said that if the Mass was not said in Latin, it was not Mass. So, my mother was different. She was a Vatican II Catholic. And she was more open to change in the system. But, this is a generational type of thing. And I think the Roman Catholic Church is, we don't look at them the way we used to as a voice of God, telling us the truth, because they've been lying to us for so long.
Jim, I don't understand one thing. How the church in the United States, okay, you have, of course, white and black audience, and they believe in the same God. But what I understand, they have different churches or different congregations.
Sex. And, yeah, oh, absolutely. It's amazing because, you know, you can you can disagree on a wording in the scripture, and then all of a sudden you have Methodists and Baptists, and you have, they're all Protestants, but they don't agree with one another, so they split off. So this has been a tremendous thing. We had congregation. I know from basketball leagues, I was in Congregational Baptist. You know, there was Baptist.
The reason I jumped in back again and everything is, yes, there is a factor that has gone on. It's been going on for decades. They say that the most segregated hour on the population is actually Sunday morning, because there are a number of churches that are devoutly African American heritages and everything. Matter of fact, the place that I work at is actually AME, stands for African Methodist Episcopalian and everything. But yes, they say that the while there are some churches, like the church that used to meet at ATAC, Christ Central, was very much of an integrated church, and they prided themselves on that. There are a number of churches that are majority African American congregation, and there are a lot of churches that are majority European American congregation. So even in the year 2023, they do say that one of the most segregated hours is literally Sunday morning.
So what's the different service? What they believe in one God.
They believe in one God, but it's styles. A lot of times, and I think to correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but I think you've attended some African American services. The African American services are more lively in a lot of ways, and everything in that space. So they're a lot more lively. There's a lot more of the music. The message might be the same, but the styles are different. So the preaching styles are even different.
But Sacha, you're also
contrast like Jesse Jackson, who was a minister, versus Billy Graham. They were both charismatic, but they had different styles.
Yes, and also there's like, what's the difference between an Episcopal and a Methodist? You know, you really have to bear down into the weeds to figure it out, because
to what extent do the different churches, Christian churches, disagree with each other? To an extent that they were killing each other because they believed in the wrong aspect of Christianity. Christians killed.
Milan, to your point, you saw that with slavery. There were people that were very pro-slavery that were in certain Christian churches. There were people that were definitely part of the abolition movement. But we can even go to the whole issue around abortion, because there are people that are more liberal in their views around abortion, and there are some that are more traditional and have a different, more hardline view around abortion. So
there are two reasons why people believe in God. One is we don't want to die; we want an afterlife. And the other one is to answer questions that science cannot answer. And that second group is decreasing enormously because science can answer more and more. And that's part of the reason why some people accept that, there is no afterlife, and science knows more and more. And that's part of the reason why religious attendance is declining.
I think you're spot on.
Yeah, agree to that.
But, we could go back to the Reformation, Martin Luther. This is like all of a sudden the Catholic Church, there was a splinter, and we had Protestants, and then they were at each other's throats.
Yeah, right.
I know you're winding down, but the other thing is there's also the notion of beliefs even within the Bible, because I know some people that will say that the Bible is supposed to be read literally, that everything that is in the Bible is like a historical document, where others will say that there are segments of it that are to be taken figuratively. So you do have some people even in religion that are like, you take the word as literally everything that is written is the way it is supposed to be, and then you have others that will point out things like the burning tree, and others that be like, nope, that's figurative language.
Do you remember Pat Buchanan? He was a candidate for the president, and Pat Buchanan said that the Old Testament was the literal word of God, and the New Testament was the interpreted word of God. Right. And he said this on his campaign, so he was trying to play both sides. Of course, he was a politician.
He's a politician.
Mark, I'd like to ask you a question. It's very interesting to have your opinion. That from the Bible, we know that God created human beings in His image. If that's true, there must be one image, which is white man, And there could be another image of a
Michelangelo's
black.
I write
Well, I
about
mean-
this in my book, Sasha.
but I mean, that's a whole
the image is not
conversation that
literal.
has been.
It's not meant
To
to be
answer your
literal.
question, Sasha, and answered objectively, that is one of the arguments that goes on even within the biblical community, because some people will say Jesus, and there is a statement of a description of Jesus, and one of them is a hair of wool, and there's another expression that gives the impression, and like I said, I didn't write the book, so I don't know, but it gives the impression that the man must have come from a African or an Arabic kind of country, and therefore that is why people sometimes get upset when they see the blonde-haired, blue-eyed vision of Jesus, because they're going like, that doesn't match what I have read in the Bible. That's that conversation about figurative versus literal.
Nazarenes
And there are some
that
people,
way,
and
yeah.
Jim, just really quickly, there are some people that would say that when you go up to heaven, that there is no color, that this is like this spirit entity that doesn't have any color, any shape, any form, or anything along those lines. So those conversations may be mute, because one of the things that I've said on not this show, this will be my first time saying it on your show, but I've said on some of my other shows, is I personally think a lot of people will be shocked, and I hope that I make it there, when they see who is their fellow companions. And if you go the opposite directions, I think some people will be shocked when they get down there if you have a religious belief. So I think that there might be some folks who be going like, Mother Teresa isn't supposed to be up here, or some other people aren't supposed to be up here, that they might be shocked at, including some people that might have done some very horrible things in life, but we don't know what they did to atone, which is another thing we talk about in religion, at their later part in their lives and everything. So like, I doubt very seriously Hitler or any of those people that did the Hamas attack are going to be up there, but there might be some other people that did some horrible things in their young lives that found a way to atone later on.
Mark, you remember opera Jesus Christ Superstar? And
Yes,
you remember that the Judah who betrayed Jesus
was
Christ,
black.
black man.
Yeah.
How come he was black? Based on what?
And that's a whole nother, that could be a whole nother conversation, because there's been this whole notion of interpretation around who plays what and everything. Like, can a straight person necessarily play a gay role? Can a white man necessarily play a black role? I am of the personal opinion, you asked my opinion, I think that there are certain things that have to be played by certain people, but then we can bend the interpretations. Like Hamilton was so long ago that there can be the latest adaptation of Hamilton, which definitely was very strongly African-American and had some African-American influences. But I think that if there was to be a play about Martin Luther King was claiming a black man. I personally don't think Dustin Hoffman can play the role. Maybe Dustin Hoffman is a better actor than I think he is, but I just don't think he can play the role because it wasn't his story.
Same with playing Gandhi. It's hard.
Yeah, I think an Indian needs to play Gandhi. Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, very interesting, because sometimes we have to get in our program some history and some entertainment. History of entertainment and Broadway shows and some others.
Yes.
That would be an interesting speech. Okay, guys, thank you so much for today's program. Mark, thank you for your contribution. And I will see you same place, same time next week.
Great to see you all again. Happy
Have a
Thanksgiving.
good Thanksgiving. Enjoy yourself.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Milan, I'm going to go get some good turkey and everything. So I'm going to get out of here, but good turkey will be on my list tomorrow and everything.
Excellent.